11 years ago is when there was a game show of Jeopardy against Watson, and Watson beat the two humans, and that was viewed as a huge success at the moment. Up until then, and Juan just covered a lot of the history of AI, almost all of it was inductive reasoning, and this included semantic search. It was all about there is an answer to that question, and you can reduce yourself till you get to the answer using compute. And Watson was able to be won by one data source mostly, which was learning Wikipedia, and it could live on an IBM mainframe. Since then, what I got interested in was when could it predict the future? When could it do deductive reasoning and abductive reasoning? Because I think that's when we really start to solve bigger problems. And those reasoning models are still, I think, in development today. But there was a big change in that. That did take a lot more compute power. You couldn't do that on a mainframe. You had to have the advances in microchips. You had to have the advances in cloud computing to make that happen. But we made enormous progress. The second thing it took, and I decided to apply that to not a large language model, but a tiny little puny model called weather. We did put that, which was trusted as we heard before, but put that, when we put weather on a mobile phone, if you all checked it today, that was done by machine. There were no humans involved. It meant we had to do 2.5 billion locations every 15 minutes. But more importantly, and it seems obvious now, but we had to teach people to deal with the fact that we weren't certain. It was deductive. So you're used to reading that there's a 70% likelihood and 80% likelihood. People had to get used to that in a much bigger way. I think that's important today. Too often, we're still going to the rules of inductive reasoning, looking for an answer out of ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot. Often, there is not an answer. There is a probability. And so then, lastly, it gets to what I hope we will spend more time on in the next 15 years, which is the human readiness to use all of this technology. As John mentioned, I now run Nielsen. I've spent a lot of time on Gen Z, so people born after 2003. I want to ask you to raise your hands because those people are all out in the back. But they're the ones who are actually going to define how this gets used. And here's what we know about that generation already. They trust AI. They trust any of these generational AI units more than a doctor. So that's where they go for medical advice. They trust it more than a doctor. It's where they go for relationship advice. It's actually where they go for relationships. It's they trust AI more than a financial advisor for financial advice. And so there's just been an enormous trust put in this. And then number two, it's all working for them on a very personalized basis. So we find that they're all getting their own information. The amount of human interaction is reducing. Dates are reducing. Marriages are reducing. And in the media world, the entertainment world, if I just go back 15 years to the time of Jeopardy, Jeopardy got a 10 rating, which means 10% of all households watched it live. Nothing comes close except for National Football League today. People did watch half of media 15 years ago in groups of 2 or more. They went to the movies together, they watched shows together. Now it's less than 4%, and the 4% is entirely live sports. So we live in a world where people are trusting the machine more than humans, and the machines are bringing them more and more into personal and personalized experiences. That can be good in some ways, but it's also super dangerous because people are lonely. And quite honestly, they're trusting the AI versus understanding we are now in a world of deductive and abductive reasoning. What you really need to do is question the AI. People need to go to prompt engineering and understand that you need to go to 7 or 8 levels to get to the right answer. You can get there in a collaborative basis. But I think it's super important that the humans build critical thinking skills, build interpersonal skills, do things like this that bring them together with each other, spend time with each other in order to take full advantage of the AI as opposed to cede our agency to it. So while the last 15 years were largely about technical advances, and there's a lot of technical advances we're going to see today and invest in. It is, I think, even more urgent that we work on the human advances and make sure that technology is actually bringing communities back together, having people learn how to interact with each other and with the machines so that we get the best answer. And I think that takes a lot of work in the design of how these roll out, and it takes a humility of being able to understand that we're no longer about getting the answer, we're about getting to the next question. Thank you.